Welcome back, everybody, to the Little Less Fear podcast. I'd like to introduce Joe Nunziata. He's a best-selling author, business consultant, professional speaker, and life coach. He has been delivering his life-changing message at events and seminars since 1992. His enlightening programs are a unique blend of spirituality, psychology, philosophy, and the power of internal energy. Joe teaches that to make permanent changes, you must clear your negative energy and break destructive patterns of behavior at the core level. This transformational process creates a new energy and beliefs designed to help you achieve sustained positive growth in all areas of your life. Welcome, Joe, to a Little Less Fear podcast. Great to have you.
Lena, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. So tell us, what led you to this incredible, epic journey of yours?
Well, I would love to say it was planned, but it probably was on some level. But I think even as a young kid, my dad was a detective in New York City, narcotics.
Oh,
he
wow.
He died on the job when I was 12.
Oh,
So,
man.
And I was the oldest. I was a boy. I have a younger sister. So that kind of really changed my life a lot. He had certain, goals or thoughts that he wanted me to have. And it really kind of threw everything upside down. But I think even, after that, it was kind of, trying to deal with that and adjusting to that situation. And, I was always looking for some help, which I didn't get much of it, but I was seeking help. But I was also very interested always in improving myself. And I think that was kind of my personality. I was that seeker, so to speak. And started to, very early on, when I was just out of high school, I didn't go to college. I went to work right away. We had some financial issues. So I, was working, actually, believe it or not, my first job, I was delivering Budweiser beer. I was driving a truck around in Brooklyn, and that was my first job. But I was always reading and trying to learn things. I got very interested in, basically, got introduced, of course, to Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
Back in the day, back then, that was like the book you had to read. And I read that. And then I started to really go from there. So that's kind of what got me started. I would say I started more or less in the idea of being for business and success. And then later, going through some issues, I ended up going through a couple of bankruptcies by the time I was about 30. And I was very frustrated because I didn't understand, because I was working hard. I was reading all these books and going to seminars and setting goals. And I just couldn't sustain success. I would have like peaks. I would have these moments where it would be working, but I would ultimately crash and burn. And I was always a very big student of psychology, which I was learning at the time, took courses and went down that road. But finally, it kind of led me into the energy work and saying that I said, there's something else I felt like I was missing. And then it led me into the more metaphysical energy type work, which, I grew up Catholic, Italian in New York. That was very far from anything, we had ever learned as.
Oh, yeah, I grew up Catholic too. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it was a very, so that was kind of very different. The philosophies were different. It was very counter to a lot of things I had learned growing up Catholic. So that was kind of a bit of a little hurdle there too. But ultimately, I just think I just kept kind of going. And then I started meeting a few really powerful people, one very powerful teacher. And, that was the direction I went in. So again, it was kind of a twisted path, but I think we all kind of have that.
Yeah, we do have a twisted path. Some of us find a really nice balance, and some of us will die never finding that actual joy. But it seems like you pretty much, you found it early. You were in your 30s when you found spirituality.
Well, I would say I was probably in my late 20s when I found it. It took me a while to really get it together. So I would say I started finding it probably, well, I had a lot of issues with religion from a young age because it didn't make sense to me. But I was, I was a kid. So if you ever said to someone, I'm not understanding this, they would just say, you're Catholic, shut up, just do what you go to do what you have to do. So I think, so I think early on it was not clicking for me, but I think later that I started to get into the spiritual work. But it took me a while to really understand the energy work, which is of course a whole different game.
For people tuning in for the first time, that are not familiar with like energy work and stuff, how could you describe what energy work is and how does it help people? or how does it, or how could it actually even go against you if it's not practiced properly?
Yeah, I think basically the understanding of there's kind of a combination of I always think of it as energy and emotion, because your emotion drives your energy. And it's not a mental game, it's an emotional game. And I think that was one of the big
Yeah.
things for us growing up in New York and growing up in business. It was very mentally driven, set goals, go forward, work hard, blah, blah, blah. And when I wasn't successful, I said, well, I'm doing all this and I'm working harder than everybody else. Why is it not working? So I think that kind of led me into this. So when we think about energy, everything being energy, and from a scientific perspective, we all, of course, vibrate a frequency of energy. So if everything's energy and I'm vibrating a frequency, then my frequency is in effect going out and bringing things in, which is the basis of law of attraction, and creating my life internally first, of course, how I feel physically, health-wise, emotionally. And then it basically, what I really learned about it that was probably most powerful was the internal shift creates the manifestation externally. And I think we're trying to do it the opposite way. We're trying to say, when I get the job, the car, the money, then that I'll be happy, instead of saying, well, even if you get those things and you're energetically,
Yeah, you're still not going to be happy.
it's not. I saw it a million times. I had a lot of friends on Wall Street, made fortunes of money, who was a drug addict, who tried to kill themselves, who did this. So, I think it's realizing that I need to get my internal self aligned and in good shape, and then I'll manifest what I want in the external world. And then what the other thing, of course, the funny part, I always say that the universe is very ironic. When you finally kind of get to that place, it's almost like you don't care anymore. So it's like, well, okay, now I manifested this, or I could, the money part, or the thing that I was so concerned about early on, you get less concerned about the physical world as you continue to elevate yourself. So, it's nice. We're living in a physical world, and obviously we want to live somewhere, and, we have bills to pay and we want to eat and so forth, but it doesn't have that same feeling. Growing up, it was so important to have money and be successful and have a certain car or whatever. And it's almost became irrelevant, which was kind of ironic as you get to the other side of it.
Joe, how does one begin to align themselves internally?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing that we have to do is be honest, which I think people are not. So I think what ends up happening is we were told and we learned what we're supposed to be and want. You're supposed to want to, whatever background you had, right? Have kids, get married, get a good job, blah, 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 whatever. So people end up, I think, getting stuck in that cycle, and then they do it, and then they're not happy, and they can't admit it and say, I'm not happy here. I'm not happy in this job. I'm not happy in this relationship. I'm not happy with my family. I'm not happy with the way my family treats me. So without being honest, it's basically impossible, because you're always most people, when they had called me, early on, I did a lot of coaching. I really don't do it now, but people would start telling, they refuse to just accept any truth about these, family, whether it was mother, father, sister, brother, the relationship they were in, even their own kids. So we have to be honest and say, this is how I actually feel. There's no judgment. It's just, that's the feeling. So that to me was the big obstacle for people, because they'll say, well, yeah, well, my mother, but she's her mother was an alcoholic, and that's why. I said, I'm not judging your mother, but if she made you feel pain, then it's something you need to deal with and certainly accept. And this is where, of course, people struggle. So I think that's probably the first. If you can't get past that first step, you really can't go forward.
Yeah, that's really important. And it's really interesting, going back to how you started this, how you started the actual answer to this question that I'd asked you about aligning yourself. It brought me to, I'm about to be 43 years old, and it's really interesting because when I was in my 20s and 30s, people were in a rush to get married and have kids. And now I'm 43, and everyone around me is divorced. And it's like, when I talk to these people, they're like, well, I don't know, I did everything right. I got married, I had the job, I had, and I was like, wait a minute, it's like they're listing things, but it doesn't feel authentic or sincere. So I mean, how do people break away though from these I guess these ancestral customs that are people are now starting to break free from it. It's like I feel like there's still that struggle going on right now with the generations just kind of finding their way, because it's not the way it was 50 years ago anymore.
Oh
So
no,
I mean, not in Wall Street, not anywhere.
no, nowhere.
So I mean, it just seems like people, the internal alignment that people are looking for would require you to accept that it's okay to do things differently, not the way that you've been shown that it's supposed to be generationally, if that makes sense, if I said that correctly.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Is I think the other thing is questioning yourself. Like, why did I do that? Why did I choose that career, or why did I get, like you say, get married when I was 26 because I thought I was supposed to? Like, why? How did I make those decisions? And what was driving me? And a lot of times, the one thing that's really important for people is a lot of them are doing it to get accepted, be accepted by family and whatever in society.
Right.
And the other part of it is to please others. And I think that's a big factor. Like, oh, I did it because this is what was expected of me, and I did it to be good, quote unquote, or do the right thing, whatever you want to call it, and didn't really follow their path. So unless you grew up in an environment where, some people are strong-willed enough to say, well, I'm not doing that because it doesn't feel right for me. But I think most people just will follow with what they're told. Hey, we're this religion, this is what we do, and this is how life is. And if you're not going to question, I have a son who's 28, and of course he's in that younger generation. But I always said, my wife and I always talk to him about, like, question everything. Like, don't accept anything. Like, and I think you need that. If you don't have that, and then you have to do it yourself, it's much harder, because were told, in effect, the opposite. You were told, just listen. The nun told you that. That's what you do. Not like, why is the nun hitting
you? Or you're going to hell.
Yeah, you're going to hell. And I'm like, well, the nun who's supposed to be holy hit me in the head with a ruler. How does that work?
No. No.
So back when I was younger in school, that was common. They walk by and smack you or hit you with a ruler, or and if you went home and said anything, your parents would say, well, what'd you do? Why'd you?
It's your fault.
You did something wrong. So these are hard things to overcome. You have to remember, this is embedded into us from a young age, and you kind of when you get out of it, it's like, wow, that was kind of bizarre that people supported that situation. So it's and of course now it's going to be all different issues where kids are between what they're being taught, how they're being taught. They have no boundaries. A lot of them are they have technology that we did not have. So every generation, of course, faces its challenges, but at the end of the day, energy is energy. It does not change. So the same principles that are going to work 1,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago will work tomorrow. So that's the one thing I love about energy work.
That's awesome. So speaking of energy work, how do you describe or understand what karma is?
So I wrote a book about karma called Karma Buster. And
I'm sorry, did you say Karma Buster?
Yeah, one of my books is called Karma Buster. It's about clearing your karma.
That's awesome.
I became very fascinated with karma because I was trying to understand how it worked. So as I was doing that, I was kind of trying to get the essence of karma. So what I learned, and the way I perceived it from all the work I did, was basically that your karma is the emotional blueprint for the experience you came to have in this lifetime. So every person here on earth, because we're really all one energy, we just came here we came here thinking we're somebody else, but we're not. But in any event, your emotional journey will be different than mine. And they're all basically similar, but we're all going to experience it in different ways. And it's really about your soul's journey. Your soul wants to understand what these different emotions feel like. So I can't know joy without knowing pain. I have to know suffering. I have to understand what that feels like. So this is part of our journey. And each person, when you look at people's lives, what I noticed was everybody kind of had a different version. Like some people were very successful.
I'll say they do.
Right? But some people are very successful, but maybe they have health problems. or some people have great relationships, or they have money problems. So everybody has different issues, or what I think of as spots that we came to work on. So we said, okay, this is going to be the best way in this lifetime for my soul to have this experience, is going to be to go through it in a certain way. And you chose the path that you want to go down. And then you have that experience. So the question really becomes, how do I have the experience? Do I go through the experience in a conscious way, which means I'm understanding what's going on? Or like most people are unconscious. They don't even know what's going on. They just kind of go through life.
Right.
And it's not a judgment. It's just different people came. Some people came not to be awake. They came to go through it in a lower awareness.
So
And I don't say lower to be judgmental, but just to understand it.
right.
So certain people came, like yourself or me, we came to say, oh, I came to really understand it, and I came to experience it in a different way, and I came to work through some of my karma and clear some stuff so I can, elevate myself. So it really depends. That's why I always say that people say, oh, I can't believe this person and this, what they're still doing. And I always say, be gracious, because every person has their own limitations and issues, and some people just can't get past it. And it doesn't mean, even I've seen people that are trying to get past it, and they're struggling because they can't get emotionally through some of the issues that they're dealing with. So I think it really comes down to us, really being in that state of compassion and understanding that each person, if somebody is negative towards me, I know that they're going through something.
Right.
So instead of me being negative back to them, I want to absorb that energy and say, hey, I want to help this person heal, even though they're not positive toward me. Now, again, for humans, this is hard because we take it personally right away and want to lash back out or fight with that person or do whatever they want. So when you learn to diffuse that, you can dramatically impact someone's life in a positive way, even though, you encountered them in a negative space, so to speak. You have the ability to turn that space around and create a healing experience. So that's always what I think of with people, is every time I encounter somebody, I'm looking to say, how can we make this a positive experience, even if it is negative? But I will say, when you are energetically at a higher vibration, you will not encounter that, because those people who are negative don't want to be around people who are positive.
That's true.
So the more you're able to, what I call, hold the vibrational space. So the more you hold yourself, and we all have ups and downs because we're human, but the more you're able to hold yourself in high vibration, those people really want to come together. Negativity wants to come together and positivity wants to come together. So you'll notice that those people will avoid you. And it's very interesting. And I've watched it in my life as people have fallen out or come in. And the ones who are, in the negative space or want to complain or be victims have fallen out, because they know my energy doesn't align. We're talking about alignment, does not align with that. So therefore, and that's what you'll start. So one of the things I always say to people is, notice a few things that'll help you see how you're doing. Because today, to me, every day, it's like you have your report card. So you go out into the world and you say to yourself, well, how did people treat me? How did people respond to me? How was I being received? If I was speaking to people, were they, engaged with what I was talking about? So, I used to make a joke when I was living in New York. I would say I knew I had good energy when I got a parking spot, because New York, you can never get a parking spot. So I said, if I drove into New York City and I ended up getting a good parking spot, I knew my energy was good. But it was just those kinds of things, like serendipitous things or positive things that happen, or people come into your life, or people just treat you, open a door for you, or, let you get ahead of them in the supermarket line. Simple things will tell you how your vibration is in the day.
That's excellent. Thanks so much for sharing that. It totally makes sense. And something I had to learn that too, the hard way, as far as like when people start falling off my radar, it's usually because they can't keep up with my energy. And at the time when that used to happen, when I wasn't aware of that, I'd be contacting them like, well, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Why are they ignoring me? Yeah, but then I realized, well, it's not really, they're really ignoring themselves. They're in their own energy field, and I'm in my own energy field. And whenever people vibrate with me, then they're able to respond and not be so, I guess, shady or skeptic or.
Well, I think it's just they're just not comfortable.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
that's how I see it, right? They just don't feel comfortable around your energy. And, you know, the more you tune into your energy, the more you'll notice it. I notice it with people immediately. I'll walk into a room and I know right away. I'm like, okay, like I know what's going on because you're
Oh
just
yeah.
so tuned in. You can see when someone feels, you know, off with you, or they
Sure.
don't feel comfortable with, you know, there's something happening there. So, you know, it's an interesting practice to just be able to just see how people are reacting and how they are responding. And I think also when you are non-confrontational, a lot of times people will try to provoke you, but when you don't take the bait, they struggle because they
Right.
get energy by provoking you to be act a certain way.
Sure.
So when you don't get provoked, it gets them very frustrated. I had this with a lot of family members. My family was very provocative. When I started pulling my energy back and said, I'm not doing this anymore, they, you know, created upset, not for me, but for them. So that's one of the things you'll notice as well.
Going back to or continuing the conversation of energy, how do you send healing energy to somebody, or how do you make healing space for somebody? Let's say a loved one,
Mm.
and you want to communicate with them, but they don't want to communicate with you because they're not feeling well, or they're ill, or they're having a bad month. I mean, what do you do in your own space, in your own headspace, when you're in your own alone time to send them healing energy vibes?
Yeah, I mean, I just send them positive energy and love and just send it to them. And because you have to remember, people are feeling your energy. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to see them. They will feel your energy going toward them. So, you know, regardless of what's happening, if you're sending positive energy towards someone, I meditate every day. And, you know, of course, meditation is one way, but you could just sit quietly and just say, you know, I really want to send some love to Nino. I really want to send some love to Bill or John or Mary. And they will get it. Well, they will receive it. They may not know it, but consciously, but on an energetic level, every vibration that you send out goes out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, it's going out one way or the other, good or bad, because the universe regarding energy, it's non-judgmental. It doesn't say that's good or bad. It just says, okay, that's what you want to place out there. That's what you're placing. It doesn't judge the vibration. It just lets you do it. So that's something we want to be very cognizant of. I always say to people, you know, if you're in a conflict with someone, and if you do send negative energy toward them, you're boomeranging that right back to yourself.
Oh yeah, totally.
So that is something also it's hard to do sometime. Now you may be upset about something and you need to deal with that feeling, but I don't want to consciously send something negative out because I know that's going to cause
Never.
a problem. So that's something to be aware of. It's hard as humans, but it's hard. It's something we want to do.
Yeah, definitely. So Joe, you have 6 books out and you're working on another one right now?
Well, I have 7. I'm working on 8. So I have one. I just did a compilation book with a group of people, which came out, I think it was earlier this year. So I'm working on one for next year right now. I have a couple of different ideas. I'm not sure which one I want to do yet, but I'm kind of fooling around with it right now.
So your book that you have Karma Buster book, and what the Karma Buster, and what are your other books that you have? What are they titled?
Well, the first book I wrote was called No More 9 to 5. That's because I'm a business consultant. Actually, that's how I started. And that was about, believe it or not, it was 2001. So it's 21 years ago.
Oh
I was
wow.
teaching people how to work from home
Oh no.
back then.
Great. And now everyone's doing it.
And people told me you're crazy. And I said, well, no, I said, that's what we should be doing. And so
You're
now,
probably seeing the future.
yeah, usually that's part of my issue. But that was one.
Yeah, I think so.
So that was the first one. I then wrote a book that I gave away for free, which is still available for free, called Finding Your Purpose, which I wrote after the 2008, when we had the crash in 2008. So that one's out there at findingyourpurpose.com for a free download. But before that, I had a business book out called Spiritual Selling, which was about using these energy principles in sales, because that's my area of expertise. My next one after that, I'm trying to think, what is that? 1, 2, 3. Then it was Karma Buster. So that was about clearing your karma, about how to clear your negative karma that you have. Then the one after that was called Chasing Your Life. So that one was basically about why we're doing exactly what you said, chasing after stuff. And there's a reason we all do it. It's part of life. So I wrote that book about why we do it. And I used my father's story in that book because his life was all about chasing. And that was that book. And my other book was called Heal the Deal, which was also a business book, kind of a second follow-up to Spiritual Selling. And I did a Success Principle book that just came out in a compilation. So that was the last.
In your book, Finding Your Purpose, you said that there's a downloadable copy on that on findingyourpurpose.com.
Yes.
What made you want to write that book?
Well, that book, I was living in New York. It was 2008. We had the financial crash, and people were really, obviously, I was living in New York during 9/11. I was actually, at that time, I was living in New York. I was actually working. I was at the airport that day, actually going on a flight before it didn't take off. It was right after my flight was scheduled, right after the second plane hit. But people had lost careers, in 2008 after the big crash financially, and they worked in banks. And these people, I had a lot of friends who were now, in their 40s or some of the 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, different ages, but had been doing something for a long time, and those jobs did not exist, and people were just really struggling. And one of the things that a lot of people were just like, hey, kind of what we talked about earlier, I've been working in a bank my whole life and I hated it, and now is my chance to go find my purpose. What is it that I really want to do? So I wrote it because I think people were searching at that point, and I think we're always a lot of people searching for that for their purpose. But
I think so.
But especially at that time, people were really kind of scrambling around and saying, "What will I do? What am I going to do?" And I think that's what ended up happening. So that was the reason I did it. And I said, I'm just going to give it away for free because I just felt like that's what I wanted to do. So we've had I don't know how many downloads, but there've been a lot of downloads of that book. Since then, it was 2008. So, but it's still out there. I still get emails from people even now about it, and people read it. So hopefully it could help some people out.
Joe, do you find that you found your purpose in life?
Well, I think my purpose is simplistic, as far as my purpose is just to be the best version of who I am. That's it. And I don't attach it to the external world anymore. I used to a lot. Like I have to do this and have so many books and speak and and I still love doing all that stuff when I do it. But at this stage, it's just, everyone's journey, everyone's real purpose is the same, is to be the best version of who you are. And also accept who you are. There are certain things that I do well, and there are certain traits that I have that are good, and there are certain traits that I have that certain things I don't do well, and certain things people may not like. It was funny because I was I was working with a client recently, and I'm very loud because I'm a speaker. First, I'm Italian, so we're loud anyway, and then I speak for a living and I train people. And someone said, "Man, you're so loud." Now, I would tell you that in the past, I would have been very taken aback by that. And I would have maybe been embarrassed or felt shame because somebody said, "You're so loud." And I said, "Oh, thank you." I said, "That's why I'm good at what I do." So it was almost like, own it, right? If you're loud, own it. That's who you are. If you're quiet, own it. Somebody says, "Oh, you're so shy." Okay, maybe that's how you are. Fine, own it. That's the key, right? Is just be the best version of who you are in this lifetime. And each of us has different skills and traits, different things that we're really good at and different things that we're not. And it's our job is to say, hey, let me utilize the skill sets that I have. And how many people do we know that are accountants that should be painters, right?
That's so true.
So this is really what it is just to say, how do I be the best version of me and also accept who I am in this lifetime? Just like, okay, this is who I chose. You chose your identity before you came. So there's a lot of power in just saying, okay, I chose it. I want to own that. I want to own the fact that I chose it. And I'm going to be this. I'm not going to not be this person because this is who I came to be. And it's very empowering. And it's not an egoic thing. It's more of I'm just going to be who I came here to be.
be the best version of who you are in this lifetime. Incredible words by Joe Nunziata. Joe, how can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners find you and your books?
Best bet, go to my main site. It's Joe Nunz, JoeNunz.com. It's just a shorter version of my name because no one can spell it right. So I did Joe Nunz. So it's JoeNunz.com. There's some free meditation downloads. All the books are on there. Everything is there. And I also have a YouTube channel where I post pretty much, since I moved, they've had a little delay, but I'll get back on track. It's a shotofjoe.com. And that's also on my main site. And I post videos up there all the time about what's going on energetically in the world and how to help people move forward, hopefully in a good way.
Thanks, Joe. You're quite an inspiration, very motivational, and
Thank
just
you.
your energy is amazing. Thanks so much for sharing it on my podcast.
Thank you.
I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and I'm definitely going to download Finding Your Purpose on findingyourpurpose.com.
You got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe, and you have a blessed rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.